This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Colombo Security Conclave. The participants are Commodore C. Uday Bhaskar, Security Analyst, and Ahmed Muin Farooqi, Prasar Bharati Special Correspondent, Colombo. Moderator is Ishan Mittal.
The Colombo Security Conclave, or CSC, started as a trilateral grouping of India, Sri Lanka and the Maldives in 2020. It has since expanded to include Bangladesh and Mauritius, with Seychelles as acting as an observer. To discuss the recent MOU signed by India's National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval, with representatives of member countries in Colombo, we have our security expert, Commodore C. Uday Bhaskar, and Ahmed Muin Farooqi, our Prasar Bharati Special Correspondent in Colombo, who are joining us to shed light on the CSC and its importance. Welcome to the show, sirs.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commodore Saab, if you could weigh in on the security underpinnings of this grouping as well as the charter and the secretariat that have been agreed upon recently by the NSA of India and other representatives of other member nations.
The bilateral grouping that started in 2011, and now we have the CSC in a more formal manner with the setting up of the secretariat, which is the big takeaway from the meeting of Mr. Doval, the Indian NSA, at this particular conclave. And the security underpinning is that all the countries in the region, whether it's India or the smaller island states, all nations in the Indian Ocean region can be subjected to different forms of maritime security challenges. Just again to repeat two examples that were already stated. In November 1988, we had the Maldives coup, which India had stepped in to avert. That was the first major political challenge in the region. And then we had the tsunami of December 2004, again in the Indian Ocean region. And India was able to provide necessary assistance as the first security provider before the other nations joined. We in India had our own experience in 2008 in Mumbai when we had a maritime terrorist attack on the city of Mumbai, and we know what happened at that time. So like this, there are a range of, I would say, security challenges that need to be dealt with. And the CSC is an important development in the sense that it formalizes the cooperation between these 6 countries now, India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, the first 3 members, and subsequently we've had Bangladesh, Mauritius, and now Seychelles as an observer. So my sense is that if this is allowed to take roots and establish a certain degree of comfort level among these 6 nations, then any form of security challenge which is part of these 5 pillars that have been identified in Colombo could be dealt with in a more effective manner. That to me is the framework in which I think the CSC is trying to move ahead.
Could you also elaborate on the point that you had raised about the maritime challenges that members of the grouping at different points had faced, from the 26/11 attacks to the Maldives coup? What is the importance of enshrining this among the pillars? And also, what are the kind of initiatives that you foresee going forward with this grouping?
These challenges are likely to occur over the next few decades in an unexpected manner, particularly if we talk about challenges like terrorism, or for that matter, the humanitarian assistance and relief at sea. The tsunami of 2004 was a completely unexpected natural calamity. What can happen over the next decade or two is that some events could perhaps be anticipated, for instance, the consequences of climate change, or perhaps oceanic pollution. These can be studied and anticipated. But challenges like terrorism and radicalization from the maritime domain have to be preempted, which means we need higher levels of surveillance. Again, India has got some capacity in what is called as the maritime domain awareness that is provided by the fusion center that India has in Gurgaon. So these are the kind of assets and the kind of awareness that India can share with the member nations and evolve a security blueprint that is a combination of preempting threats before they emerge. I've given the examples of terrorism and radicalization, or dealing with them when they are detected, as for instance drug running, human trafficking, gun running. These are all endemic as far as the region is concerned. And the long-term threats like climate change, oceanic pollution, For this, I think we need not just a regional effort, but a global effort. And hopefully the CSC will provide a blueprint to take forward, this vision that Prime Minister Modi had outlined in 2015, which is called Sagar, or Security and Growth for All in the Region. So there is a lot of work that has to be done, but the CSC and the setting up of the Secretariat would provide the necessary institutional framework for what is now emerging as an important multilateral initiative in the maritime domain.
The CSC started as a trilateral grouping and has expanded to include Indian Ocean stakeholders as far as Mauritius. What is the fulcrum of this grouping, and can it turn global eventually? Can it go wider than its current membership?
You see, it originally started, the grouping was a trilateral grouping of three nations, India, Sri Lanka and Maldives, which started in 2011. And thereafter, due to certain reasons, it did not gain much traction. But post 2020, India gave a major push towards the regional cooperation in security areas. India has been pursuing policy of neighborhood first as well as Sagar outlook, that is security and growth for all in the region. And here India has always maintained that maritime safety and security, it is of paramount importance for India for its own sovereign interests as well as for, giving more importance to trade, economy, commerce, and preventing certain challenging areas like piracy and various other issues. Now, you mentioned that is there a possibility that this could go into bigger grouping, a global grouping? To begin with, when you have three nations and later you see that there is scope for further increase because area is huge, the expanse is huge. And in addition to that, this area is something which impacts India directly. So there is definitely a scope in the future. There is a possibility it may be extended to the other nations in the region as well. We also have a bigger grouping, that is the Indian Ocean Region Association, the IORA, which has all the member states which are a part of the Indian Ocean. And this could be a small grouping in that same direction.
Moving forward to the MOU for Permanent CSC Secretariat in Colombo, which was signed by Mr. Ajit Doval with the other representatives. What is the importance of this move? I mean, what does it underpin really with respect to CSC and its prospect that you have laid out earlier?
Privately speaking, you see, the founding documents which were signed yesterday, the Charter and the MOU, this will enable a creation of a CSC Secretariat, and that gives proper administrative shape to the conclave. The conclave, although it exists on the paper, it doesn't have a usual kind of a structure. There are the NSAs of these member states which participate, the deputy NSAs, they hold meetings. The 6th NSA level meeting happened in December 2023. 7th meeting is scheduled to happen later this year in India. But to have a secretariat which could actually give support to the member states in countering these challenges of the region, that had not happened. And this is something which is groundbreaking and something which will give a lot of strength to the conclave in general and the entire gamut of the regional security collaboration in particular.
How does the CSC initiative aid India's geopolitical worldview and its relationship with Sri Lanka?
India has been pursuing Sagar, that is security and growth for all in the region. This is something which is very vital. India has always maintained that there are traditional challenges like the territorial issues, there could be military issues, there could also be other arms related issues which are usually, they come under the traditional challenges. Yesterday, Mr. Doval had talked about these challenges. In addition to them, he also spoke about other challenges like the non-traditional ones, which include newer challenges which we have been coming across in the recent times. These include primarily the natural disasters or terrorism also in particular, piracy, and in recent times we have seen in 2020 a health pandemic in the form of COVID. Now these are newer kind of threats. There are hybrid threats also, which some amount of traditional, some amount of non-traditional. And that's like cyber security areas, the hybrid warfare, or use of information technology to spread disinformation campaigns or campaigns which can tarnish certain images of world leaders. So these are the challenges which exist. And this is something which India wants to take a strong presence about and as a regional player, regional power, and to provide a kind of support to these smaller states which exist in the region because this is an opportunity for India to give capacity to those nations which do not have.
The CSC is based on 5 pillars of security cooperation, from counter-terrorism to cybersecurity. Could you explain further the comprehensive nature of this cooperation program? You've already touched upon it, but what are the other areas? Mr. Doval talked about hybrid challenges that may appear going forward. So what are these hybrid challenges? If you could touch upon those topics further.
Hybrid challenges, cybersecurity is a major area, climate change is another area. So climate change, if we look at the region in general, every year we come across issues in which there are urban floods. There are also cases where you have heat waves which are coming in the region. We have noticed urban floods in India. We have noticed them in Maldives in the recent times. And this is something which could happen in any part of the world. And this is one of the areas where some amount of mitigation and some amount of, immediate response and relief, that is where India has been talking of being the first responder also. And apart from this, there are hybrid warfares in which you have conventional military tactics and unconventional methods like misinformation and political destabilization. These issues together have a huge impact. In the recent times, in 1988, the coup attempt in Maldives was one where India had immediately sprung to action and provided help to Maldives. And not just this, there are other instances also where such similar kinds of events could happen. And this is where the conclave, as well as the member states, could come together and provide a lasting kind of a solution in such emergencies.
Sir, how can CSC complement the existing IORA grouping as well as other such groupings that have some sense of overlap? How can they complement while also, maintaining that emphasis on security that CSC has in its name itself, the security component? How will they be complementary and yet different?
Regional groupings are aplenty. The IORA, it contains 28 member states, and the challenges which face IORA are different compared to what we have, especially in the immediate neighborhood of India. So Indian Ocean is a huge ocean which touches all the way up to Australia, which touches all the way to the shores of Africa. And here we have also British territories. We also have French territories in the Indian Ocean. And there are issues which will not bother these other nations, which may bother India and the immediate neighborhood. So that is the reason why a particularly focused regional collaboration, it has more importance in this regard. Now, secondly, the Colombo Security Conclave, it is a renamed conclave because in 2011 it was just a trilateral grouping for regional security cooperation was the name at that point of time. This time around, there has been some amount of realization that there is a need for immediately understanding the current geopolitics and how it is relevant to all these member states. And these member states have themselves felt that, yes, we need to come together and we need to have a regular grouping, a regular kind of interaction among the national security advisors and the deputy NSAs. And they would discuss what are the issues that face their countries and how they would tackle them. And this is something which is being put in place. It is being institutionalized through creation of a secretariat.
There are also broader maritime challenges that are taking place. There are tensions rising in the region with respect to the territorial waters, etc. So do you think that some of that will also inform the CSC going forward, or do you think it will be entirely about, these common challenges, these traditional and hybrid challenges that the countries face?
Primarily speaking, if the Colombo Security Conclave has to discuss security and safety in the region, it will cover most of these areas. There are 5 pillars which have been mentioned with regard to the aims and objectives of the CSC. The first one is maritime safety and security. The second is countering terrorism and radicalization. Third is combating trafficking and transnational organized crime. Fourth is cyber security and protection of critical infrastructure and technology. And the last is humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Now, most of these areas which you have mentioned, they do fall under either of these 5 pillars. The maritime safety and security would definitely take care of the territorial issues with regard to any particular set of countries. So there would be some amount of overlapping of these areas falling in some region or the other. And definitely if it falls within the jurisdiction of this CSC in the Indian Ocean, then definitely the member states can come together and they can deliberate on it and try to find solutions towards it.
Thank you, sir.
You were listening to a discussion on Colombo Security Conclave. The participants were Commodore C. Uday Bhaskar, Security Analyst, and Ahmed Muin Farooqi, Prasar Bharati Special Correspondent, Colombo. Moderator was Ishan Mittal. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani.